Hi, this is Richie Kotzen, and you are listening to LA Metal Media.
LA Metal Media with Allie Jorgensen.
Hey everyone, this is Allie Jorgensen from LA Metal Media Magazine, and I am here today with a man who needs no introduction. He was formerly with Poison and Mr. Big. He's an amazing, multi-talented solo artist. He's a singer-songwriter, guitar player for the Winery Dogs, and he's just released an incredible collection of songs to showcase his soulful and powerful vocals, his blazing guitar work, and he plays all the instruments as well as produced the entire album. This new masterpiece is called 50 for 50 in celebration of his 50th birthday. Richie Kotzen. Richie, how are you?
I'm great, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I think that's the nicest introduction I've heard in quite some time, so thank you very much, and I'm honored to be on your show.
Well, thank you so much. And so your new release, 50 for 50, is an incredible gift to give your fans on your birthday, and it sounds like a massive undertaking. How long did the process take you?
Well, I'll tell you how it came to be. Initially, I had 12 or 13 songs that would have been a normal record that would have come out this year. And I went on tour last year with my band. We were doing a bunch of festivals in Europe. And I had a hard drive with me that basically mirrored what I had in my studio at home. And I started going through a bunch of my song ideas, and I realized that I had a massive collection of music that was almost finished or not nearly finished, but just needed some attention. And I started thinking, when I get home, I really want to finish this music. I didn't like that it was just sitting around there in kind of disarray. And so I started working while I was on the tour, kind of making notes and archiving and coming up with some lyric ideas where I needed them. And I had mentioned to my tour manager, who was the only person I really told, I said, man, I wonder if I could finish this stuff and stop when I get to 50. And I wonder if I could even get to 50 songs, but stop when I get to 50 songs and put out a new record with 50 new songs on it on my 50th birthday. And so that was something that was kind of joked about, and he kind of encouraged me to do it. So when I got home, I just started working, and then something very, very interesting started to happen. Is as I was finishing these ideas, I would get a brand new idea. So I'd finish up a song like Mountains, for example, which was one that's been floating in my head for 10 years. And then suddenly I'd have the idea which became Innocuous, and I'd have another new song. So they really started moving quite fast. And then once I got to about 38 songs, I started kind of hinting on my social media that I was doing this project. And because by then I knew I was going to hit my mark at 50. I could have done more, but then if I would have stayed in the studio any longer, I'd probably be in a loony bin.
Wow, that's amazing. So they were in different states. Like some of them any of them completed, or some of them had just had vocals on it, or there were different states.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so for example, there was a song on there that ended up being called Same Old Town. And that song, there was drums, guitar, and bass on that song, and a guide vocal. And that was a leftover track from, I did a record called Peace Sign back in 2009, I think it was. And that song was one that I never finished. And so I went back and I heard it, and I finished writing the lyrics and kind of added a few things here or there. And so there were things that happened like that. And then there were other songs that were actually completely finished that I forgot about. Wow. And so there was a song called I Am the Clown that was recorded at least 15 years ago. And for some reason, I never released it. And so there's a couple songs like that on the record. But it was kind of, once I got into it, I actually enjoyed the process. By the time I got to the very end, I was happy to be finished. I wanted to get across the finish line. But I don't think anything was compromised, because really the only variable I had was I'm not going to put anything on the record that I don't love. And I'm not putting anything on the record that doesn't represent me in some way shape, or form. And I think that's the best kind of, variable to use. When a lot of times if you have a deadline or other kinds of pressures, you have to compromise. So the beauty of it was I did not have to compromise. And had I not been able to finish 50 songs, then I wouldn't have released it, and no one would have known, and nothing, we wouldn't be talking about it. But thankfully I got there. So there you go.
Well, when you have so much material that you're going through, how did you choose which songs were going to be placed on these CDs?
Well, I basically would pull a song up and listen to it, and if I felt inspired to work on it, I would. So sometimes I'd pull up a song and I'd work on it for a while, and then I'd kind of hit a wall, so to speak. So I'd put it away and do something else, and it was kind of that kind of approach. So some songs, would finish very quickly, and some songs, I'd do a little bit here, a little bit there, and then one day something would click, and I would be able to complete it. But the hardest thing, I think, in the process, really, and it sounds silly, would be the sequencing. And I remember trying to sequence it, and at one point I thought, there's no sense in sequencing this. There's too much material. And then I went back and tried to do it again, and I finally found a way to make it work. And, it was a bit of a math equation trying to get, the 50 songs to fit on the 3 CDs,
right,
but also sequence the right way. Because, like, the first time I did it, I sequenced what I thought was a great sequence for the first disc, and then I had 10 minutes of empty time. And then, it became like this weird math equation where I had to figure out, okay, that song goes here, this goes there, and so on.
Interesting. Wow. And when you went back and you were looking at all this material, how was it to listen to everything from spanning your whole career?
Well, I had to listen to it in bits, because I personally couldn't sit through 50 songs of me. I can't. And so what would happen is certain songs I'd end up listening to a lot, and then other songs I would just make sure that they were okay. I don't mean okay as in how good they were, just meaning okay in the sense that they're finished and they don't need any more attention. But, I had to listen to it in its entirety 2 times, because once it was done, like once the song's done, I archive it. I never listen to it unless I have to go back and learn it. But to master this record was very tricky as well. And so there were a couple things that got messed up that I had to go back and re-listen. So that was a bit daunting, having to do that. But, now, every now and then I go and I put on, I listen to disc 1. I don't have the discs. I have the files. So they're archived, like disc 1, disc 2, disc 3, but it's in my phone. Excuse me for a minute. I had a wicked sneeze.
Bless
Sorry
you.
about that. Yeah. But so a couple times, I've listened to the first disc in its entirety, and it's just crazy to think that I actually did this. Put out this much material at once. I know when I finished it, I thought to myself, I'm never doing this again. I'll never go in a recording studio ever again.
Well, there's so many great songs on here. I just have to try to cut it down to a few that I wanted to get into. The first track, Stick the Knife, is definitely one of my favorite songs. It's such a powerful opening track. It's got your scorching guitar and then your burning vocals come out. How did you choose this one to be your opening track?
That's one of the only things that was obvious for this project for me, was what I was going to open with and then what I was going to end with. And so that, to me, just the way it starts, because I guess I first came on the music scene as a guitar player, and I became known as a shredder-style guitar player. I wanted to open it with something that's, kind of showed that side of me, because the reality is I don't play that way very often, these days. I'm definitely more involved in writing songs and singing and what have you. I mean, so to have a song with that kind of old school, Richie Kotzen guitar,
yeah,
I thought was kind of fun. I thought it was fun to open the record. And then, the big power chord that leads into the lead vocal that's kind of alone by itself. I just thought it set a cool tone.
Absolutely.
To start the album, and then from there, I could go anywhere I wanted. And so that was my motivation for putting that first.
And another favorite is Devil's Hand. Can you tell us the meaning behind that song?
Yeah, well, the song is really about loss. I mean, the lyric, it was all a dream. I was strong and lean. I lost all my inspiration to the devil's hand. She was all for me. I was all for her. I lost all her adoration to another man. So obviously the character is, dealing with, having made mistakes and lost something that was really meaningful. And then there's also an element deep in the lyrics where, you don't really know if it happened that way. And the reason I say that is that a lot of times I think people really romanticize their past. You might have a relationship and the reality is it really wasn't the right relationship at all. And you finally get out of it, and then time goes by, and then your interpretation and your memory of that starts to change, and you start to kind of add a little element of fantasy to it, and then you have these feelings of remorse and regret, which really aren't accurate and true. So there's an element of that to the song, and it was interesting for me to figure out what to lead the record with. How do I lead a 50-song record?
Right.
And I chose that song. Yeah, I chose that song really because I knew that I could make a compelling visual to go along with it. And I really also think that I love the idea that the song starts off and really finishes as a ballad and then turns a corner into this transition, and you have a 2-minute, almost George Benson influenced guitar solo at the end. So it was just a fun track for me to record, and a meaningful track, and really, let's face it, radio doesn't really play the way it used to, especially for an artist like me. So I know that in order to put a single out, you need a strong visual to go with it. So I just thought I could make something really interesting to go along with the song as far as the video was concerned.
Absolutely. And did I hear that you directed that video as well?
Yeah, I did. I worked with my friend Vicente Cordero from Industrialism Films, and he was my editor and my director of photography, or cinematographer rather. And I directed the video. I had everything written down. I storyboarded it shot for shot. And, I just had this concept of a down-and-out character that was basically living in his van. And so he was having these flashbacks throughout the entire video of, happier times. And then there's a transformation in the middle of the song where he kind of goes into the public bathroom, and he's been carrying this bag around with him, which is really the only thing that he kept from his previous life, which was a nice change of clothes. And so he comes out of the bathroom transformed, finds himself in a jazz club, and does this burning solo, and everyone celebrates him. But then at the very end, it cuts to him waking up in the van again. And so you don't know, because the lyric says it was all a dream. You don't know, did it really happen? Is he just imagining this? Which I thought was kind of, interesting. And my editor told me, he said, you better put a suicide hotline number at the bottom of this video because it's so depressing.
Oh, it's powerful. It's really powerful.
I liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. And, we were going to use an actress for the flashback scenes to show the character with the love interest. And then I just decided to use my wife, Julia, because I thought it would play in much more realistic. So that's what we did.
Yeah, no, it's great. Amazing video. When you write a song, do you hear like a vocal melody in your head or a guitar melody in your head?
That's a great question. Usually, everything revolves around the vocal for me, the melody. And the melody will dictate the drums as well. Once you have your melody, you have the cadence of the melody, the drums become obvious. But, sometimes I write a song, and I'll write a song around a bass line.
Oh, wow.
Or a guitar riff, or a concept. The song Nickel Hustler was written around that title because the title came as a joke. We were out at a restaurant and with a group of folks, and my wife was telling a story, and she was being funny, and she wanted to call someone a gold digger, and she didn't know the term, being from Brazil. And so she said, instead of gold digger, she said nickel hustler. And everybody at the table started laughing. And I said, that is a song title. I got to write a song around that. And then no sooner did that come out of her mouth, she wanted to know where her fortune cookie was. And she says, where's my lucky cracker? And then the table busted up again. I said, that's it. I said, I have to write a song. If I can incorporate the concept of a nickel hustler and a lucky cracker in the same song, I'm done. I've done it. So that's awesome. One of my favorite tracks on the record.
That's so awesome. The another absolute favorite song of mine, and I have to say it took me by surprise, and I think everybody that listens to Disc 1 is going to take them by surprise, is the last song on there. And it's like so haunting, and your vocals are haunting in the song, Innocuous. How did you choose to have such a different ending to the first disc?
Well, that song seemed to fit as an ending piece to me. And in the same way that This House ends disc 3, it just seemed to make sense after everything that happened on that first disc. It starts out with the crazy guitar, it's rocking, there's a couple of rocking songs, there's Devil's Hand, there's Dogs, which are kind of, a little on the depressing side, but still, engaging. And then it goes through this whole gamut of kind of like bass solos, like Nickel Hustler, and more of a funky kind of element with Dirty Tricks and those songs. And it just felt like by the time we got to the end, it would be nice to just kind of turn it off a little bit and do something a little more, unexpected. And that song actually was one of the newest ones. I remember I was in the house, and I was sitting talking to Julia, and I had the guitar in my hand, and I started playing that riff. And I'm like, wow, this is really simple, but I have an idea for this. And I ran down to the studio, and then I cut that song rather quickly. It didn't take too long. It kind of all happened. And I used my great-grandfather had a beautiful Gibson guitar that I inherited, and it's so old that it just says the Gibson on it. I don't know what the model is, but it has a very unique sound, so that's the guitar I used on that as well.
That's an incredible song. And actually, the collection of 3 CDs, each CD is like its own solid album, and every track is great. When someone is going to listen to this, how do you tell your fans to listen to such a collection when each album is its own separate album?
Well, I sequenced it the best I could with the intent of listening in that order. So, I would say, if you're someone that likes CDs, listen to 1 and then listen to 2 and then go through number 3, at your pace, whatever makes sense. But, if you're a Spotify type person, then just, let it play from top to bottom. And then, you can make your own playlist too. Obviously with the technology, you can kind of sequence that however you like.
You've seen so many changes in the music industry in the past few years. What do you consider the most significant change?
Well, I think technology is really the main thing. I think when I was young, saying that sounds funny because technically in my mind I'm still 7 years old. But when I was a kid, in order to make music, you needed to be able to play an instrument. You had to learn at least one, something, and then you could, go in the studio and record. Technology has come to the point where you don't even need to know how to tune a guitar, and you can still make music, and you can still make music that people are interested in. I'm not saying this as a diss on anyone, because, there's a lot of creative people that do a lot of creative things that aren't necessarily musicians, but they're making music. So I think that's the biggest change. The technology opened the door for a lot of people to make music that normally would not be able to do it.
And you continue your amazing success in this ever-changing industry. How do you keep it going when most bands are just struggling to survive?
Oh, well, I can't speak for other folks and how they do it, but I do know my whole existence in this business, I was very concerned about not having to answer to someone. I mean, the idea of being able to control my own destiny, so to speak. And there's so many things you can't control, but the things that you can control are, your abilities. You can work at it, you can practice. You can, when you feel like you don't want to put the work in, you force yourself. It's like almost in some ways in the very beginning being an athlete and just doing the work, putting the time in, and then things become instinct. Like, playing the instrument now for me, it's instinct, and writing a song, it's instinct. And so I don't even know where it's coming from, but I really made it a point to figure out, how to do things on my own. And from the very beginning, when I got into the studio the first time and they started putting the microphones in front of my guitar amp, I'd say, well, why are you doing it that way? I'm not questioning you because I don't like what you're doing. I just want to understand what you're doing. And then they plug it into a mic preamp and a compressor. And what does that do? Why is that happening? And this and that. And so I asked all those questions to learn, because I knew that there would come a time where maybe I didn't have the money to pay someone to record me, and maybe I'd have to do it myself, or maybe I wouldn't have the money to hire a drummer to play on my record. So maybe if I figure out how to do it myself, I'll be able to have drums on my song. And so it was really that literal. And so that's kind of, how I built my existence. I own masters to 14 of my records. So the accounting, I have my hands on that. I see exactly what's going on, because for many years I would put a record out and they'd give me a little bit of an advance and I'd never see anything. And it would always be, oh, well, it didn't do too well. Oh, you only sold, less than 10,000. I mean, I've heard that for years. And then the minute the business changed where I could get my hands on stuff, my lifestyle started to improve because I was actually getting paid. So I've resisted signing a recording contract for many, many, many years because of the fact that I've already built a base up since, 89. Not to say I wouldn't sign a recording contract if I believed that they were going to do something to broaden my base. But unfortunately, so many times you get involved in a situation and you kind of get messed up, and they don't broaden your base, and they start telling you what to do creatively. And for someone like me that has people that give a shit about what I do, I'd rather just go in, make my music and put it up on the internet and let people listen to it. I feel like I've gotten to where I needed to get to, especially with this record. I'm not sitting around thinking, oh man, I need to show myself. I feel like I put myself out there at my best, and I just want to preserve whatever it is that I have and not screw it up somehow.
That is such awesome advice, especially for people starting out, coming into the industry. It's so different now than it used to be. That's really, really great advice going out there.
Right on.
We saw your show at the Canyon Club in Calabasas, the night of Guitar Madness, showcasing the 3 monster guitar players. It was an amazing night. Do you have some special surprises planned for the 50 for 50 tour?
To be totally honest, I haven't thought a lot about the tour or the live set, because I kind of had a crazy start to the new year, with my birthday. We had a big surprise party in Vegas, and I left and I went on this cruise and performed, and now I'm in the Caribbean for the last 10 days, about to come home tomorrow. So I've been kind of in this weird whirlwind, and then of course having just released the record, and I've been talking about the record every day, doing interviews. So at some point I do have to focus on the live show, because we do have a tour that's still being booked for North America, and another tour in Europe that's already been booked for September. So awesome. In the very near future, I do have to focus on what I'm going to do for the tour.
Well, happy belated birthday also, by the way. When you're on tour, do you have a special routine or something that you do to keep yourself physically healthy and keep your voice healthy?
Well, the voice is an interesting thing, because you are the instrument, and the biggest part of it really, and I hate getting technical, but the most important thing really is technique. And what I mean by that is singing correctly. And I've learned that over the years. even if you do sing correctly, you can lose your voice because, you know, you're a person and it's a physical thing. So some of the key things are, you know, hydration. Smoking is not good when you're on tour for your voice, although I've done it on and off for years. Alcohol is definitely not ideal, especially for me. Red wine really ruins my voice. So if I do drink, I might sip tequila. You know, back years ago it was Jack Daniels. I kind of removed that from my repertoire, and sleep. I guess the biggest thing, really, beyond what I mentioned, even the cigarettes and the drinking, you know, if you in moderation, you'll be all right. But really, sleep. If you don't get 8 hours, and you have to sing, especially if you do 4 shows or 5 shows in a row, that's the real killer. You know, and another thing, when you come off the stage, it's always a good idea not to talk. So I do all my meet and greets before I play, and then once the show plays and I'm done, like, I'm gone. I disappear, because the last thing you want to do is get into a conversation, and that's when you can really ruin your voice. Wow,
that's amazing. Well, I guess we got to wrap it up here. We're so excited about this release. Everybody, you've got to check out 50 for 50 from Richie Kotzen. It will blow your mind. There's 3 solid CDs here, and there's so many amazing surprises on there. And we're looking forward to the tour that's coming out. Is there anything else you want to say to your fans out there?
No, just thank you for checking out the music, and I will see you on the road.
Great. Thank you so much, Richie.
All right, bye.